Welcome to a Nerdie Bunch presentation of Back to the Future. We traverse the space-time continuum watching movies 20 years or older to discuss their relevance then and how they hold up now. I'm your host, English Dave, and help me get my 90s groove on my squad, Natalie, Tim, and Raven. What's up, peeps?
What up, Dave?
Oh, hey.
What's up, guys?
For those of you who are regular listeners of Back to the Future, you are seeing two new faces. This is Tim and Natalie from our Nerdie Sports crew. I figured we're doing a sports movie, and this coming weekend was supposed to originally be the NBA All-Star Weekend. It was supposed to be Valentine's Day, All-Star Weekend, same day, hence love and basketball. But the bastards, they moved the All-Star Weekend to March this year, like couple of weeks ago. But whatever, we still stick with this because then I can just release this again in March and people can watch it again. This movie was released April 16th, 2000 on a budget of $15 million and it had gone to make $27.7 million. It was written and directed by Gina Prince Bythewood. You may have heard her name recently. She recently directed The Old Guard for Netflix, which is a very good movie if any of you have seen that, which is an interesting path from this to that.
So crazy, but I'm so thankful for it.
right. I'm surprised it took her that long.
What a journey.
Right. She's done a lot of TV.
20 years, so
right.
I mean, you know.
Showing that, you know, people will say, oh, women can't do action films. It's like, no, you just don't give them enough opportunities. Because clearly she's been a director for that long. You didn't give her the opportunity until now. So it can be done. This stars Sanaa Lathan and Omar Epps. Fun fact, they were dating prior to the movie. The director did not know this. Probably helped with the chemistry. I feel they had great chemistry in this.
Interesting. I did love the chemistry. It's one of the best parts of the movie.
Right. But I'm going to start with you, Raven, because you know the deal. What is your history with this film? I know for sure you've seen it before.
Yeah, I got to keep it short. So, no, I have quite a history with this movie. I mean, I feel like, you know, I don't know if it's a big thing everywhere else, but for me, you know, black girl growing up, I think when this came out, I was 10. Yeah. So technically, I guess this movie is a little above my age group. I probably shouldn't have been watching it, but I was very into it. So like the scene for me, you know, the scene was like extremely steamy for me when I was younger. Watching it now, I'm like, nothing even happens.
Right.
Like I was like, you know, like when you're covering your eyes and you're like peeking through, it was like one of those for me. And now I'm realizing nothing is going on.
Fun fact, the studio sent notes after that sex scene saying that it wasn't sexy enough and it looked uncomfortable for the character, and the director was like, yeah, it was her first time, it will be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's awkward. Honestly, if anything, to me, I felt like it made it almost too smooth. Like to me, that was like, you know, it was like, oh, the first time is going to be with like a best friend, person next door. Maxwell is going to play in the background. I'm going to automatically be looking my best. You know, they're going to look their best.
Yeah.
You know, it set really high expectations for me. Honestly, as awkward as it was, I was still like, yes.
It was that Maxwell effect. I feel like Maxwell
whining in the beginning just game changer.
Makes anybody
if you put
get
it
it
on
on
mute, it is a terrible scene. But
right.
with that song, you're like, oh. But yeah, I love this movie, and I used to play basketball growing up. I was super tomboy, one of the boys. So, you know, the dynamic she has with him is a dynamic I had with many guy friends, actually. So, you know, and not in like a flirty way, but like just them fighting even just on the lawn. You know, that was very much my life. I had a lot of cousins my age, so it was just, yeah. Well, so this movie definitely hit home for me.
Tim, had you seen this film before?
I actually have not.
Oh, I mean, how was it for you your first time then?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm 30.
I'm only laughing because it's really not shocking.
Well, let's be honest. I do miss a lot of movies. When we get into these nerdy conversations, like, Tim, you've seen that before. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. No,
honestly, I haven't seen much either. It's not just you, Tim.
Just busy watching sports.
This podcast was created because there's a lot of old movies I was tired of Raven not seeing. And that's literally why I created this podcast. So
let's do it. Add to my list.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
but how is it for you then? You know, I'm sure you'd heard of it. So how is it for you kind of finally watching it?
You know, it was always on that list of 100 movies I need to see. And thank you for prioritizing it because it's something I really enjoyed. You know, for me, basketball is my favorite sport. So to see their love for each other and their love for basketball, those two things were very crystal clear to me. And I think the movie portrayed that very well. And of course, get a good soundtrack to get in that 80s era to make you feel the vibe. I think the director did a wonderful job, or whoever selected the musical choices.
Soundtrack
starting
is
off. Yeah, the soundtrack was nice.
I just kept on saying, I was watching it with my friends, and I just kept on saying, this soundtrack though.
Yeah.
That's the best part of the movie. I feel like no matter what you thought of the movie, you at bare minimum thought this soundtrack. Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And it, not just good, but it was spot on for what was happening in the moment. It's as if the writer said, I have to have this song. No other song can work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was tonally.
Yeah.
Natalie, had you seen this movie before?
Well, when it came out, I was 14, so no, not
I
then. But
I was ahead of the game.
but I did see it maybe like 10-ish years ago. It was like on TV, so it was one of those things, but it was, I caught it with commercials and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I rather say like, yeah, I've seen it, but I didn't appreciate it as I did when I just recently seen it, and definitely took a more appreciation to it. And the soundtrack brought me back, and like I'm an old soul, so like a lot of those songs and stuff really touched my heart, and the movie itself was super emotional for me. Like I even cried during the movie. And
Okay.
it really touched me in a specific way of like the love they had for each other, and how from basically the start to end, it's just like their love never faded. And that was like my whole, like the favorite part about it, the love that they had never faded.
No, I enjoy this film. Again, like you guys, I'd seen the film before, but it's funny watching it now. I almost felt like I didn't appreciate the film for how good it actually is as a film. Because, like just the subtext of it, obviously I knew the story, but this subtle things in the story that happened that I completely forgot about. I was like, oh shit. Like the whole her going to Spain. Totally forgot about that. I just lost the whole thing, especially on this Spain. And
It's like halfway through.
Right. It'd been so long since I'd seen the film. I understood the little bits of it, but just even the nuance, the subtext of just like how women versus men are treated in sports,
And it's still relevant.
Still relevant to this day,
Still.
100%.
And the things like that. I like that it doesn't shy away from that. It doesn't shy away from the various realities of sport. And I kind of forgot that it does all that, and I really appreciated how that was done. I'm going to give you guys some fun facts on how this movie came to be. It's a somewhat autobiographical. There you go, autobiographical. I'm like, oh, blah, 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 blah. There you go, the assist.
There you go, the
returns.
assist.
There you go. Yeah, it's somewhat.
Magic Johnson.
Gina Prince kind of based it on someone on her own story. And fun fact, Sanaa Lathan was not the first choice or the second. I think one of the first choices was actually what's her name? Gabrielle Union.
Gabrielle Union. I kind of
Yes.
I kind of see that. Yeah.
I love Gabrielle Union so much.
And
so.
which actually led to her and Sanaa not being friends on the set, but then now they're really good friends. Now they're actually good friends.
But it added to their little character dynamic. Right? When they had that moment, I felt it. I was like, you always have that bitch in high school. There's always that bitch.
You trap asshole.
Also, the director originally wanted to actually get an actual athlete to play the lead role, and actually looked at Serena Williams and Marion Jones.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. What's the acting
That's
like?
That's slightly
at that
one of my only complaints. Rewatching it now that I'm older, I don't know if I believe Sanaa Lathan as a basketball player. Now they're like, I'm older. It's the hands for me. I don't believe she dribbles.
Well, fun fact: she had not ever played basketball prior to this film.
Oh yeah,
a lot of training. She got the arms.
She has the build, but I don't believe the handles.
Yeah, no, they had to get some stunt doubles for some stuff. They had to do some stunt double stuff.
I was fooled. I thought she was nice.
There you go. It worked.
Hey, got 10, then it's fine.
The strip basketball scenes and the one-on-one scene at the end were all unscripted. They're all unscripted. Omar Epps and Sanaa did those themselves, and again, it probably helped that they were actually dating during this filming, so the strip poker stuff wasn't too hard for them. They're like, yeah, sure. No. Can we go all the way? Is it R-rated? Huh? Nah.
Yeah, right.
Right. Also,
they're
fun fact.
Mad they yelled, "Cut!" Oh, come on.
Right. Like,
just
damn it. when he's
save it for the bedroom later.
Right.
Save it for scene 40.
The movie ends with Monica in the WNBA, but fun fact. When the script was written, the WNBA did not exist, so that's not how the movie was going to end. But it took so long for the film to actually get greenlit that the WNBA existed and it was written into the script.
Crazy enough, that was actually a thing that I was going to bring up. I learned that through watching that this time. because I don't know, to me, when I was watching it, WNBA was already a thing, you know? So it was like, for me, I was like, cool. You know, I didn't think anything of it though. It was like people go to the WNBA. I wasn't thinking anything of it. Watching it now though, I didn't realize that throughout the whole movie, the WNBA did not exist. Like for
that
her whole,
was my thought too. Like when she
Yeah.
was playing overseas, I'm like, why is she overseas? Like it
Yeah, I
didn't
was like,
click.
there's no way she makes more money in Spain.
Right. I'm like, it didn't click. And then she comes back, you know, and then she's working as a banker. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? But yeah, it just, right. That was
I
a
had to
good,
realize that. I was like, oh, wow.
Right.
The WNBA was still
Yeah.
new. She's, you know, from the 80s. Yeah, that makes sense.
It made sense.
Because like I've had the WNBA for years, you know, but that makes sense.
There you go. There you see breaking barriers and opening doors. You see, this movie was part of showcasing all that. All right, we're gonna go into the film itself. I'm gonna continue some like other questions I had while we talk about the film. The synopsis is as follows: Monica and Quincy are two childhood friends who both aspire to be professional basketball players. Quincy, whose father Zeke plays for the Los Angeles Clippers, is a natural talent and a born leader. Monica is ferociously competitive, but sometimes becomes very overly emotional on the court. Over the years, the two begin to fall in love with each other, but their separate paths to basketball stardom threaten to pull them apart. I like how the movie's broken down into quarters. That's another thing I never noticed watching it before. I thought that was really, really well done.
I get it more now, for
right?
Sure.
It makes so much more sense.
When you actually understand basketball.
I was like, I get it. That makes sense. I see what you did there. I added my own titles though to the quarters. It just says first, second, third, and fourth. But I added titles. The first quarter I call Childhood Meeting. I think that's appropriate. We're introduced to Quincy and his friends playing ball, boys being boys, talking shit about each other. A new kid arrives, and I like how like it's clearly a girl, but none of them want to see that. They're like, "Oh my god, it's a girl!" I love when they do that in movies. and again,
pulls out the Lakers hat.
Right.
I will say
Long
though,
hair.
to give it credit, when we're kids, everyone looks
This
like
is true.
feminine or not, and like there was a lot of kids I couldn't figure out when I was on the playground. It's like he has very long hair. I have no clue.
Quincy's kind of jealous that she's got skills and plays a bit rough and ends up hurting her. Fun fact, the original script had her tooth being knocked out, but because Sanaa actually has a real scar, the director rewrote it to fit her real life scar. So that was a nice little touch there. The first day of school, again, I love these moments of just childhood when Monica's forced to wear a dress and Quincy's like, "Do you want to be my girl?" And she's like, "What I gotta do?" Like, I love those moments. Like,
It's so awkward.
I don't know. We should kiss
so
right now.
innocent. So innocent.
I was like, I love when he's counting the kisses. Like,
That's like the cutest part of the movie. It's like,
but of course, you know, he turns into the stereotypical guy. Like, yeah, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. And I like, again, a little touch of her showing independence. I can ride my own bike. You know, I'll be your girlfriend, but I can ride my own bike. Yeah. So Raven, our first question for you. You know, you grew up a sporty girl as well. This opening scene, how did you relate to, and how authentic did you feel it was for the setup of the story?
it was almost too authentic. I used to play a lot of basketball with the boys, and you know, you go through a certain age, you get to a certain age where it's like, oh, you want to be my girlfriend now? I don't know what this is, you know, but sure. And you make up all these little fake rules, and you know, you're watching your parents who also don't have it figured out. But when you're a kid, you think they do. So like, let's do these things. I think that makes us, you know. So I felt like it was definitely accurate. And watching it now, I think I'm realizing more how much of a foundation in terms of themes that was for the rest of the film. Just that one scene kind of sets the character dynamic throughout the whole film. Like the struggle that they end up having throughout the film is the fact that he has this idea of what a man's supposed to be, of what a family is supposed to be, of, you know, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, and these dynamics of, you know, girls and guys. And because of these roles, or the way that he sees roles, it kind of interferes with their progression, you know. And the same with her. She has this idea of, you know, a woman that is, you know, compromising as a terrible thing, is weak, you know. And between the two of them, we have such opposing ideas, regardless of the feelings you have for one another, you know, it blows up. So I feel like that whole opening scene really kind of sets the tone and gives a lot of background character and chemistry to the characters, kind of starting out just that one scene.
What I like about that scene, I'm coming to you, Tim, is also, you know, the way Quincy acts. He's not, you don't see him as this like dick of a child or kid. You know, he's acting genuine because he thinks this is how he's supposed to treat her, because he genuinely likes her. But again, he's just acting like he thinks he's supposed to act. As a guide, you know, do you relate to that scene? Especially, you know, we're told as kids, boys are supposed to do that. Like Raven said, girls are supposed to be like this.
Actually, my first girlfriend and I, you know, or girlfriend, quote unquote girlfriend, you know, I was 11, 12 years old, just like them. We had a common love for basketball. She hooped at school. So I definitely connected with that for sure. I was really all about that one-on-one battle. You know, it's Quincy and Jamal versus Kelvin, I believe, and Monica, the other kids that wasn't too good. So they thought, easy win.
Easy win.
You know, we're going to beat this girl. But then she crosses up Jamal. First scene, boom, layup. And then last scene, like Quincy's like, no, I'll guard you. I got this. And then boom, she beats him too. And he was pissed. So he pushes her, as you said. And all of a sudden she's on the ground bleeding. But then her mom is cleaning her up. And her mom wants her to be that like girly girl. And all of a sudden she's like smiling. She's like, nah, I like this. I'm a tough girl. I'm not like any of those other girls. I'm not like my sister.
It's such a perfect setup.
We're taking into the second quarter, which I call high school. And now Monica's actually part of the basketball team. And this is where we start to see her aggression. And so she doesn't get to play as much as she likes. And at home, like you touched on, the mother doesn't want her acting like a tomboy. And I like when mom says, "Oh, you'd be pretty if you got your hair done." It's just like, what does that mean?
It's so messed up. Moms don't even realize, man. That shit cuts. Like,
right.
She's gonna have a complex now. That's trauma. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And also the dad tells her, you know, you to think about other things outside of basketball, already thinking that, you know, this is a phase that you should be in. This may not be long term, which contrasts with Quincy's life, right? He's the star of the team. You know, he gets all the girls' attention. I like seeing the dynamic at this stage again, because, you know, clearly they've been friends for a few years. They're in high school. They're very close. Even situations like their ride home, the fact that Monica can make fun of him about girls wanting to talk to him, you know, and then he's teasing her about her temper. You get that these are people who are friends. They're really cool with each other. But there's one moment that I really liked that she mentions that I never noticed, when she talks about how, because she's a woman, they look at her like, oh, you're being hysterical. But if it was a man given that same amount of temper in sports, it'll be like, yeah, you know, it's really pushed. And
Serena Williams is dealing with that, a couple years ago?
Exactly. And I thought that was a very, very nice touch. And that evening, Quincy's parents have a fight, which is contrast, because Quincy hears them having a fight. It contrasts to earlier on when he was younger, when he used to hear his parents having sex.
In the other room,
Right? Now they're fighting, which I thought was really nice. And even the moment when he goes up to Monica's room to sleep, the way she reacts is as if, oh, I've done this before. They're fighting again? Sure, come on. You know, it wasn't like this the first time that's happened.
It didn't seem like it was the first time.
Yeah, which I love too, because I feel like it shows that like it went sour a while ago and it's still getting worse. You know?
Yeah.
I think the movie does a fantastic job of conveying the passage of time without being 5 years later. You know, it's subtle little things like, oh, the sister has a baby suddenly. You know, the soundtrack, the sister has a baby, or like, you know, like subtle things that you're never confused about how much time has passed. On her next game, Monica knows there's going to be a scout there, and so she's trying to do her very, very best to play smart. But of course, she gets angry and is pulled out for overreaching. She's a hothead, and she misses the final shot and has to foul out, and they lose. I will say though, I love the POV shots when she's in her head, like, okay, you're gonna do this.
Those were really good. Because I felt intense, like I was back on the court. I was like, oh, yeah. They did a good job of that, and like the narrative.
First question for you, Natalie. I spoke on the fact that this movie does touch on something that is larger than sports, about, you know, how women are treated, and it's not just in basketball. I just think throughout very aspects of life, if a woman shows any form of like aggression or anger, even if it's justified, you're seen as hysterical. But for men, it's letting off steam. You know, how did you find the film's portrayal of those themes?
It's still accurate, 100% accurate. And it's like, it was, even though the movie is set, you know, 20, 30 years from today, it kind of like angered me in that situation. I'm like, wow. But again, like, I know that was then, and I'm like, this happens today. I've experienced it watching other people where it's like, oh, you know, he's fired up, he's passionate or whatever. And I've even heard other men say, no, she's hysterical, like you said, or she's acting like a bitch. I'm like,
emotional.
Emotional, that's another one. And where after meetings they're like, no, we need to pull you aside, and you have a couple seconds, we need to talk because we thought we were a little out of hand, yada yada. And we're still talking about this 20, 30 years later. And it's sort of like in the movie where Monica like had told her mother, she said that she wasn't ashamed of her mom being a housewife. She was more ashamed that her mom did not stand up for herself. And that's what it was then, where women were ashamed or were not as inclined to do that, to speak up for themselves and to speak their mind, period. But as slowly as we're moving forward, we're at a place where we're saying, okay, I'm not taking this shit anymore. I don't give a shit what you think. This is it. I'm a woman. Take it as is. And I don't give a shit if the man is passionate. I'm passionate too. Period.
Preach.
I'm gonna slam my rack. I'm slamming.
Right. Tim, the previous scene also, I spoke about there was a scout at the stadium, and she's feeling that pressure because of the scout. And this is something that a lot of high school athletes do go through, throughout the history of sport. So, knowing that you have to impress the scout, you don't want to miss your shot. That's it. How do you feel the movie captures that part of the reality of sports?
I thought it did so well. Just as you're saying, getting in the mind of an athlete, that's what the point of view, scene kind of portrayed. And she was like, well, play smart. But then she reaches in because it was really good at steals. You saw throughout the whole movie. She was really good at stealing the ball. Beast with those hands. So I was like, I thought from the get, I'm like, this girl just knows basketball. She had a constant, attention to detail for that. But to focus on the pressure of a high school kid, when you break down the stats, as I do with the Nerdie Sports audience all the time, we have 2% of college or high school athletes, 2% of high school athletes make it to the NCAA, which is college. And only 3 in 10,000 men go from being a senior on their high school basketball team to being drafted in the NBA. And for women, it's about 3% even make it to college. So the odds are really slim. And you have your parents in the crowd. You have those scouts. I'm sure there's so much pressure now. In 2021, we have all these Instagram followers and tracking if you're a top 100 player, like you're giving these kids a ranking right off the get. And we often see a lot of undrafted players make it to the NBA. We see a lot of unranked players make it to the NBA. So kids need to remember that even if you're not highly projected like a LeBron James or Zion Williamson, you still got a shot. And this movie really yeah. Well, there you go. Hey, Raven, maybe you should come on board.
I know some things. Only specifically basketball.
Game.
I don't know.
That's all good. That's all we need.
That's great. That's Tim right there.
Absolutely. I got my Dwayne Wade jersey on. I got this jersey when I was 13.
The Raptors are my favorite team.
I've had it for like 18 years.
Tim, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Did you wear that jersey because Gabrielle Union's in the film?
Dude, no, but
that too. Did you know?
But seeing her in that silver dress, goddamn, I was like,
"Oh man,
Union is so fun,
so fun." And then he's with Tyra Banks. Tyra Banks is his fiance later.
I was like, "What?"
Just as you were saying,
shocker!
All the baddies.
I was like, "Damn, they got everybody."
We get to the high school dance. Monica arrives with her date, and Q is shocked to see her for the first time in the dress. I love it. Didn't know Nike made dresses. I was like,
love that line.
That one triggered me because I feel like when all my cute days in school, because I didn't wear dresses either, and like I wore a dress at like graduation and like prom and the dances and stuff like that, and it's like, no matter how cute you feel, there's always that one girl that just strolls by and drops that one line.
Seriously.
You're instantly just like, give me my jacket and my sweatpants. I'm going home.
Nike actually makes dresses now, so.
Yeah, exactly. Nike was like, you know what? That's a good idea.
Right.
I revealed the jersey dress. Horrible. The jersey dress wasn't there in the neck.
As the slow song comes on, they both dance with their significant others, but watching each other. I love that scene because even the song "I Want to Be Your Man" plays.
The song, though, so good.
There you go. Very, very appropriate. Later that night, they meet up. Their dates didn't end up like they wanted it to. And Monica gets her college acceptance letter. Q opens it and she got in. And he tells her that he's also going to the same college. I like it when he tries to kiss her at first. She's like, oh, gives him the cheek at first. But at first it's awkward until she invites him in. And they have sex for the first time. And to Maxwell, a woman's world. We talked about this scene in the beginning. Yes, I think it's really well done. I think it's done well as a first time.
I appreciate the condom moment.
Yes.
100%. It's small, but I appreciate it's a thing. You know, in movies, they really don't use condoms somehow, then get mad that kids don't use protection. It's like they don't see it ever. It just seems so taboo.
And it seemed like he was actually putting it on. It took the same amount of time. I'm like, okay, just like, wait a minute.
Like, y'all really gonna
20 seconds, okay.
This movie supports safe sex.
Right. which leads me to my question, Raven. It is about that sex scene. What do you think of the romance between the two, and just how genuine did it feel? Not just in terms of the chemistry of the actors, but also kind of keeping in mind how young they are. You know, it's young love.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's very believable. You know, I was watching it again, thinking to myself, you know, these are grown humans acting as high schoolers, you know, but they did it so well that when I was watching it, I felt like they were around my age, you know? So I felt like the chemistry was very natural. The scene was just awkward enough to where it was kind of cute. Yeah, I feel like it's all understandable and natural.
We're taking to the third quarter. This is where they go to college. Monica is on the team, but she's struggling on the team because, you know, she may have a good offense, but her defense needs a bit of work. She showboats, and the coach punishes her for it. Q and Monica spend time together. Again, I like these moments of time they spend together. It feels genuine, like they're a genuine couple. And they play strip poker. Like I mentioned earlier, this was a not scripted scene. I mean, not strip poker, strip basketball.
Steamy scene.
Right? And we get a quote that does come back. Right, again, when she cheats and hits him in the nuts, and she's like, "All's fair in love and basketball," and that ends up coming back later on in the film, which I kind of like that setup and payoff. I like when she gets past him and she's like, "Where's the D?" He turns around, he's naked.
He's naked.
Yeah.
There's the D.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's like innuendo.
We get another sequence that highlights the difference between male and female sports and how it's received. We get a montage of Q playing to large crowds and everyone's there.
Yeah.
You know, Monica's playing to smaller crowds. She's bench.
It looked like a high school and there's just like some fanatics that are shirtless. Yeah.
They were so random. Just put USC on their chest.
They just didn't even know what event they were at. They're just still pumped from the football game last night or something.
Yeah. Been drunk for a whole day. Yeah.
They woke up on the bleachers. Yeah.
I feel like she acknowledges them because she even says, "Did you see the crowd?" And I was like, "What crowd?"
Oh, honey.
Oh, it's cute. But
it's like
we start to see her train harder. You know, she wants to get better. She starts training. We get that montage of her. And again, you slowly realize this movie's her movie. You know, these are the things that kind of tease that this is her movie. She's the one that has to go through the pain of trial.
Yeah.
Q gets to spend time with his dad, and his dad, you know, tells him things like, his dad's constantly telling him that don't focus only on basketball. You know, basketball is great and everything, but focus on other lives. And you start to see why the dad brings him down. The dad tells him about the paternity suit, and the dad did cheat. And Q goes home to find out that his dad was cheating on his mother. He tries to confide in Monica, you know, telling her that, you know, everything that his dad taught him, he questions it. But she feels bad because she has curfew. And she has to go and she has to leave him, which leaves Q heavily affected by it. And as you've seen throughout the whole film, he's pretty much had a good life. You know, things have been good for him. So this is one of those moments like, oh shit, he wasn't ready for things like this. And he's almost kind of somewhat sheltered in certain ways, you could say.
It's tough when you grow up with no problems.
Exactly. Though we see that as things go bad for him, things are getting better for her. She gets better with her defensive skills. You know, she takes the foul really well, you know, for the team. And the coach is pleased with her growth and puts her as lead point guard and tells her that, you know, the only reason I'm tough on you is because I see potential in you. I like the line, when I ignore you, that's when you should worry.
That's when you should worry. Yep.
That's real. That is very, very real. Q is drinking his emotion, and he goes to the dorm and he finds that his dad is there, and dad wants to apologize. And he tells his dad that he is dropping out of school and wants to play full basketball, which is something his dad did not want. And, one thing I will say with the dad is you can see that the dad, is genuinely sorry that he disappointed his son, and he fucked up in his marriage. And you can see the whole time that the dad always knew that he fucked up. When he says to the dad, why don't you become the man that you always tried to make me become? And I think that's part of why. And that's the thing. I think that's part of why the dad didn't want him to go into the NBA, because he knew that as strong as you are, as strong as I thought I was, I still was seduced. I don't want that for you. So I don't want you to go into the NBA. And I think that's part of that, what that was, because the dad knew what it was. He even said that whole spiel, 200 girls will come and then 50 of them get through there and then 2 of them get through there. And after a while, that's
real life though.
Very real.
Every basketball player says that, those women are very determined.
Yep. Where are we?
But also with that being said, I realized too that, also something that I didn't notice before, but a small thing that they kind of hinted at, one of the first argument scenes between the parents, the argument is over the fact that he had to pick up a job as a scout because he's not playing anymore. And that was a big deal. Because before it was like for sports players, you make all this money while you play and then you retire or whatever. And there wasn't any, severance package or whatever. There was no set plan of retirement. So a lot of people didn't know what to do afterwards. And a lot of them didn't invest or save their money. So
you're still young when you retire.
Yeah, you're 30 now and you've done nothing else. You're 40 or whatever, and you've done nothing your whole life except your go ball. Now you have no experience and you're competing against people that have 20 years of experience doing whatever they do. So you're at entry level jobs. And, that was also a thing too. He was trying to get his son to have job security outside of being an athlete, because what ends up happening later in the film, something like tearing your ACL is, it really affects your career. And for some people, they don't bounce back from that ever. So it's kind of just like, as mad as you might have been at dad was kind of right. You should have maybe, found an alternative or something else.
Finish school.
Yeah, exactly. So I do like that comes back.
Tim, I have a question for you. Coming off this scene after they break up, because he feels that, first of all, he's kind of a dick when he brings the other girl over. He's just like, yeah, this is so-and-so. I was like, what?
Revenge cheating. Right. Yeah.
Like, she didn't even know
there
about
are ways
it.
to
It seemed like she didn't know.
Bullshit.
Right?
Bullshit.
She was like, okay. It is such I feel like it's something that anyone who's chasing their dream has to go through, chasing it, or you might have to go through. Sometimes you get to chase your dream with the person you love. But, how do you feel about this film's portrayal of, chasing the dream versus the person you love?
It should have been smooth. Like, they're both going through the same situation, but the movie keeps it consistent where there's a different stigma for men and women. The ladies, as you mentioned, they don't have this big crowd that USC men did. They played in the little high school gym with like 4 rows and 100 people.
They didn't even pull out all the bleachers. Some of them were still pushed in.
Not at all. But it's a balance between what do you really love and what are your dreams, and are you really going to motivate me and be there for me to support throughout the process. And he was super selfish, and they both were in a way, because she wanted to focus on making curfews so she didn't get cut. And it worked out for her because she was there to get a charge call, which shows your grit, determination, and focus. I thought that was a perfect portrayal to understand. Like, they understood
basketball. Makes so much more sense now that I understand what a charge actually means.
A game-winning shot. It's something that doesn't really show up in the stat box score, but your coach is going to love it. And she, promoted her to be the starting point guard because of that. And all of a sudden her friend was like sharing the news. Hey, Quincy, did you hear? Monica's going to be the starting point guard for USC. And he's like, where's the keg? He's like, literally drinking a beer. It's like, I couldn't care less. Let me just get wasted because I'm having daddy problems because my pops cheated on my mom, which makes sense. Like, he's dealing with emotions, and he lost to Temple and had probably 10 turnovers that game because of that. But he just wasn't. From
that little montage, it was bad. It was a bad game.
Oh, real bad. It was like his fault. He definitely blew the game. And his teammates were like, come on, bro. Like, you're definitely blowing it for us. But he was in his feelings. Like most college guys, they weren't thinking about the girl. They weren't mature enough. So I think it portrayed like, how are you going to act when you're 11? How are you going to act when you're in high school at Crenshaw? How are you going to act when you're at USC? And how difficult are things when you're in Barcelona? Like the timeline in the movie was seamless, and having it break down, as we mentioned before, between first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, just represented the basketball game perfectly. I thought it was brilliant structure wise. But to focus on the love and dreams battle, it's like they were both pretty selfish, but Quincy was a big head, as Monica always, reminded him of. He was always selfish, and he's like, well, I guess, I got to make curfew too. It's like, yeah, we can't talk. I'm like,
Asshole.
dude, like, it's probably 9:00. You definitely got time. He just wanted to be a dick about it. And then he's like, well, I know she's going to see me. Let me go talk to this girl, bring her to Burger King just to make a point. It's like, yeah, well, it was a cheap date. It's like, yeah, because you're cheap, maybe.
It's
like, whatever.
But also, if it was about talking, which she had also said, we can talk in my dorm, because it wasn't about not talking. It just was that she couldn't be outside of her dorm after 11. Like,
Absolutely.
At least let me get in the door. I could chill, whatever. Let me chill for like an hour, then let's sneak back out. But like, let me be checked in first, And it's like, if it were the other way around, though, it wouldn't even be a question, which is what's messed up.
Absolutely. And I'm sure they were talking for like over an hour on the bleachers. And she was, just as you were saying, she was respectful enough to be like, hey, let's finish this conversation. But he's a macho man about it. And he's like, nah, she doesn't have time for me. It's like, because all he was thinking about was himself. He would go to business class and he's like, well, I'm just going to figure out how much loot I'm going to make because of or what do you say? He's like a commodity. He was always about
exactly checking his numbers.
Yeah, I got to be better to my dad. That's what he always wanted to prove. And for her, she wanted to be like Magic Johnson. She wanted to be the first.
Which, that is amazing goals, little lady.
I love that it was about her. It was more about her than
it's
Quincy.
her story. Yeah, it's definitely
At
her
first,
story.
I'm like, oh, it's definitely about this guy, and how their love story comes about. And I thought she was going to quit basketball because of him and join him and build a family and be like her mom. But at the end of the movie, her mom's like, no, I appreciated that you had fight in you. Because I didn't have that fight. I didn't stand up for myself when your dad did bring that pizza and I made this meal for 5 or 6 hours. Like, Monica was consistently confident in herself and willing to tell someone when, nah, I don't agree with you. I want to do it my way. So I respect her tremendously.
Probably where it shifted. That's probably where it shifted. Since at first it was all about him and all about Q, yada, yada. But when it started becoming about her, he couldn't handle that because everything was given to him, and the small challenges he had, he would just fold. And he wanted no, you have to be here for me. You weren't there for me. No, bitch, I was there for you. Just because I wasn't there past 11 o'clock on the bleachers with you.
Also, what other chick was gonna listen to you whine on the bleachers till 2-3 a.m.?
Nobody.
You know what I'm saying? With no
pissed.
expectation. Like, please.
He was pissed that she wasn't willing to sacrifice her dreams for his dreams.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about.
That does take us to the fourth quarter of the movie, Adulthood. They're going through the different stages. Monica is now famous in Barcelona, like we spoke about earlier on. The WNBA did not exist at this time, so for women to take it further, they would have to leave the States. And she's out there doing well, but she's lonely. And meanwhile, Q plays for. I didn't catch it before, but he may currently play for the Lakers as a sub, but he'd been bouncing around various teams. Yeah, he never had a
that I
team.
Noticed watching this time too, which is like, yeah, you entered into the draft and everything, but like, he definitely should have waited because like nobody was even checking for you like that apparently, because you entered the draft, you weren't even that big of a deal, and then you ended up being on the bench and then passed around or traded. I feel like as an audience watching it, I felt like now that he isn't trying to be just like his dad, what is his actual goal? It probably was never basketball in the first place, So everything was so rooted to his dad. Now that you have this, now that your dad is basketball and that's your association, how do you continue to, pursue it the way that you were? So I love that whole kind of montage moment. And I love that it kind of showed that, ultimately her love was always actually basketball, whereas his was what came with it. It was the fame, it was the attention. He even said that in the end of the film, I miss the attention, but that's about it, and that's what it was always about for him. Whereas for her, it was about the game itself, and playing the game, the education of the game. And I love that.
He tears his ACL. Again, I kind of see a bit of showboating because he went
That's
for
a
the
tough
extra
scene
dunk.
to watch.
You know, for the extra dunk and hanging, and he fell on it.
Yeah.
After having a shitty game, then you're gonna dunk and hurt yourself? Come on. Like,
Monica surprises him in the hospital. I'm reminded that at this era, cell phones didn't exist unless she would have known that he was engaged to Tyra Banks. I just like how... Gone?
Did you check how old that game was? They were playing a little basketball game in the dorms.
Yeah.
It really showed the era. I was like, damn, this is the 80s. I don't
The video
even know what
game.
game that was. It was like
Right.
Techno Ball or something.
No idea. I had no idea.
I was like, and the cell phones were giant.
The Tyra Banks moment when she's like, yeah, we're engaged, and she does that with her hand.
That was
it's just like,
annoying.
it hurts. It hurts.
Yeah.
Definitely
that.
don't twiddle your fingers.
It's like, oh, you're Monica. You're the girl.
Oh, I know about you.
Also, you're the
together.
childhood like neighbor.
Right.
You've
Right,
been
right.
deduced to neighbor.
Right.
Like, ouch. Like,
Yeah.
damn.
Monica mentions that she's not going back to Barcelona, that basketball isn't fun for her anymore. And Monica later on tells mom about Quincy's fiance and wants advice. And this is when they kind of have a fight. And you touched on it earlier about, you know, Monica shared her feelings with her mom and mom shared her feelings with Monica. And I think it was a great situation because they were both kind of right. And we see Monica getting an office job and Q's getting married in a couple of weeks. He tells her that he also is finding basketball not as fun anymore and he wants to go back to school. But he doesn't quite get why she quit. He understands why he quit, but he doesn't get why she quit. But she doesn't want to talk about it. And while this is happening, Monica's mom is watching. And, you know, she has a good mom moment. She's like,
I love
wow.
that moment. That's such a cute mom moment.
You
like,
go for
oh,
funny. That's funny because Raven, I want to ask you about that. You know, what do you think of the mother-daughter relationship in this film in terms of how they viewed each other? Because they're both supposed to be women. They're supposed to get on, but they have very different dynamics. What did you think of that relationship?
I love just how true it is. I think that, you know, every kid kind of comes to a point where you get to a certain age, and usually in your late 20s, you know, early 30s, where, you know, it's kind of like you realize, you know, the things that were kind of wrong, you reflect back, you looked at your parenting, you say your notes and say your piece and hope for the best, you know? But I felt like it was a very honest portrayal of that conversation. I think that you fully understood each dynamic. You understood where the mom was coming from and how the words that her daughter was saying would come off disrespectful, you know, and hurtful. Like when her mom slapped her, even though I was like, yo, you shouldn't slap her, man. She's like grown. But then I was also like, yeah, I'd pop you too, you know, like, you know, but you know, I just felt like it was an understandable conversation. Like I said, it's two different times. And I felt like it was similar to like, you know, a conversation I've had with my grandma, but you end up coming to the realization that like, we have the same roots, we have kind of the same ideas, we just go about the same thing differently. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't make us bad people. We just go about things different ways, but ultimately we have the same goals. I love you, you love me, you know, whatever. And I love that later on, you know, that like, even though we don't see it happen, transpire over time, you kind of get the idea just by body language that Monica and her mom are closer, you know, just the scene with the baby and her sister outside by the pool, just like the body language, you know. I feel like in any other scene, Monica was always kind of like uptight, you know, or she was, you know, like kind of fixing herself constantly when her mom was around. You know, this time she's relaxed, she's chill. And then, you know, when they're alone, her mom is kind of like, oh, I was talking about you, you know. You know, on the low is like, be that warrior, you know, but you ain't hear it from me, and like walks away, you know. And I love that because it's like, go out and be wild, but you know, I didn't tell you to do that. Do your thing, you know. It's not me, you know. But I did love that moment. I felt like it was cute, and I felt like I appreciated that moment in the film because it was a redeemable moment that I feel some films would have kind of overlooked. You know, the movie would have ended and we would never have gotten clarity. We would have been like, that mom is just a bitch,
right?
You know. Right. So I appreciate it. I appreciate the scenes. Also, we didn't talk about it, but I do. I absolutely love Regina King, and I think they did a good job. For casting, like, first of all, they look alike, but even just in the small roles she was in, she was such like a good big sister. I was like, yeah, you be a good sister. You do her hair. So I was an older sibling. I used to do my sister's hair. So I felt like it was a
That
cute
was
thing.
cute.
But
It's realistic. I liked it.
that's why I appreciate this. That's what I said earlier. This film doesn't really have an antagonist, like a person that's like, I hate that person. You know,
It
they
just
doesn't
has
have
characters
that.
dealing with life.
Yeah,
like
it's real
at a
characters.
specific time,
Right.
you know?
That night, Monica goes to Q and tells her the reason why basketball isn't fun anymore. And she professes her feelings for him, and he tells her, well, it's too late. I'm getting married in 2 weeks. And so she does what they do best.
Which was very selfish. I was like,
Right.
come on, son. You missed your chance.
But hey, she does what she does best. She challenges into a game of basketball to decide their fate. And she admits that she apologizes and admits that she should have been there for him. And I did like that moment where she says that, I wish I was there for you. I should have been there for you. But she says to him that, I feel deep down you want me to win. And they start playing. She starts off winning. It's a good game. He's like, no, fuck that shit. Takes his brace off. Starts going for the shots instead. Instead of going for the layups, he's going for the outside shots, which kind of brings her mood down because she starts to see what's happening.
Too.
Yep.
Made.
And I love the moment again where you think, because again, I love how this plays out, because usually in sports films, the final game is like a game for the championship. But this is like a game for love.
Yeah.
And then you think it's going to go down like she says, like he's going to allow her to win. But then I love the moment where he's like, nope, checks her, scores, and it's like all's fair in love and basketball, with the dramatic irony, because she said that to him earlier on. I love that, how we kind of the payoff of that line. And you're thinking, damn, this not going to go anywhere. As she walks away, he calls her back, double or nothing. And I know everyone was like, yeah.
I will say, though, that dunk hurts. That dunk is like your heart just...
Right?
I'm like,
Her
if she
face.
was there, though, like, I feel like her being there, the moment that ball goes, like, through the hoop is her heart sinking. It's like a very good, like, visually metaphoric moment. Because I felt the sinking feeling,
Right? You're like,
it was like, ooh. Because it's one thing to make a winning shot, but a winning power dunk slam is a lot.
Again,
you didn't have to do all that.
I think it's more
Could've laid it
impactful.
out.
I think it's impactful because in her heart, she felt, he wants me to win. So that dunk says, no, bitch. No, I don't. Because it's hard dunk.
Shut it
It's
down.
not. It's just
Drink
shut down.
again.
It's like, no. But I have a theory. I think this is a final moment of his masculinity coming to play. He always wanted her to win, or always knew they'd come back together. But he knew one day the story of how'd you get back together. He didn't want it to be, I beat your dad at basketball. He was like, no.
Yeah, I called her back.
No, I don't want that. I don't want that. This is his masculinity coming in the way and his ego. He's like, no, because he wanted her the whole time. When he
didn't want to be with the stewardess.
right.
She was so mad at that stewardess, the mom.
And I did like the line of double or nothing, because that's all you had to hear was like double or nothing. And you're like, you didn't have to see anymore. You didn't have to go anywhere else. Just see that. So Nat, I want to ask you, that final game, again, usually in movies, again, I mentioned it, movies end usually with like a final game for the trophy. What did you feel about this movie ending with them kind of playing for love?
I think it was a perfect ending. It's like, you didn't think that was going to happen, kind of like you said, the dunk, whatever, and then double or nothing. That kind of made it hopeful, like, oh my God, yes, they're finally going to end up together or whatever. That was like the winning moment. That was a winning shot. I felt like that sealed the deal, that the entire movie was all about love. It was always about love. It was about the love she had for basketball, the love he had for basketball. But at the end of the day, it was love, period, for each other, basketball. She ended up getting her career in pro ball. Then she turns her back. She sees him courtside. She sees the love of her life there, the kid. And also the kid was sort of like a symbol of their love. So it was a perfect sealing of everything. It sealed everything together. It was just, boom, love. Love conquers all. And that's this whole film, that's what it did. It conquered everything.
And it plays into the idea again. They both said this isn't fun anymore. And it wasn't fun because they didn't have each other. Right? That's why it stopped being fun. And having each other made it fun again. And I liked him accepting that, hey, I can support my wife. He's happy, courtside watching her and supporting her. He's enjoying it. You can tell that he's enjoying this, with his
now
daughter.
that he's all washed up and useless. I'm playing.
But that's it. It takes those moments to humble you, to make you appreciate what really
Basically,
matters.
Right.
when you don't have shit, you had her. Right?
Yeah,
Now she's
it's
the
like
breadwinner.
she's always been there my whole life. She's
She
always
always
been that
was there.
consistent one. Yeah, always.
While he's sitting there mad that she wasn't there for him, like, bro, I've literally been there for you your entire life. Are you kidding me?
Did you know? One moment I liked, I skipped it earlier on, when you can tell he always liked her when she started talking about she couldn't remember her stats, and then he remembered.
Yeah, it was like 3 offensive rebounds in the championship game. Yeah.
Like her shock was like, "Oh shit, you knew that!" I like that moment. For those of you who didn't realize, there is an end credit clip of this movie. It's not much, but it's their daughter dunking the little toy basketball hoop. Maybe assuming at a sequel story. I don't know. It could happen. It's been 20 years. You could do one right now.
Been rumors for a long time, but I think it's just like, what would you do?
I think you should leave it. I think this movie ends appropriately. I did like the fact that it ends with her playing for a team and not him. Did you notice she took his last name? Well, she double hyphenated her name at the back of the jersey. I never noticed that before. I was like, nice little touch, and I thought the movie was great.
Also, as a random touch, I just want to say for close that only now knowing like what I know about like sports rivalries and stuff, does the whole like, I like the Clippers-Lakers dynamic throughout the whole film. Because if you don't know, you wouldn't get it. But it's like, it's a very subtle thing. But like his dad plays for the Clippers. She loves Magic, who's on the Lakers. Eventually, he ends up on the Lakers. He ends up in the Lakers, right? You know, when he was like mad at his dad, he ended up on the Lakers. You know, which is also a big F you to his dad. You know, just to marry someone who's a Laker.
And she was on LA Sparks. They both went to USC.
Well, Sparks,
Crenshaw High School. It was all LA. It was all LA.
Do you guys, in my brain, I couldn't help but saying, safe driver saves 20%. Safe driver saves 20%.
Yes.
Every time. Safe driver saves 20%. Anyway, I have a couple of responses. I asked our nerdy listeners for their opinions on this film. And so I'm going to read some of them out here. We have a listener, Safwa. She says, in an extremely creative and understated way, it really captures love and grief. True. That is very, very true. What we have Mr. Sofu Studio says, it's a classic and very authentic. I agree. What else we have? I have, Curality, our very own Carlos, who manages Curality, says, a black love classic with no trauma porn. I agree. I think a lot of black classics do tend to be traumatic. We talk about black slavery and black pain.
Yeah.
There's one of those black movies that don't really talk about that. That is very, very true. I
love that it's a well-made black movie that isn't a black movie.
Yes, exactly. Anyone can enjoy it. It's not like, it's only for black people.
Like, Tim, did you watch it and feel like, movie. I don't understand this?
No. But honestly, it connected with a lot of things that I love. Whether,
See, that's what matters. It's great. And it's just a good film,
Finally, Jade says her favorite quote, I'll play you for you. For what? Your heart.
Oh, my grandma actually commented too. She messaged me saying, love the soundtrack. Takes me back in the day.
I mean, it started with Al Green, Love and Happiness. This is like a 70s song.
Exactly. And there's sweet things in it. Like, too good.
Yeah.
So while I mentioned that the NBA All-Star Weekend was pushed, Valentine's Day has not been pushed. I still think this movie is very appropriate for the weekend. I feel like it's a great movie for lovers to watch, or people who like love and who appreciate love. I feel all of us here, we're appreciatists of love. You know, none of us are too egotistical to admit that. I thought it was a very touching movie. I love the emotion. I love the sports. I thought it was great. I'm happy you watched it. You nerdies, what do you guys think of this movie? Those of you who have not responded to us, find us on social media at The Nerdie Bunch. Let us know. Tim and Natalie, like I said, are part of the Nerdie Sports team. Tim, do you have a quick plug for Nerdie Sports or reason why listeners should listen to you guys?
Yeah, same as Dave said, follow us on nerdy.sports on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And basically, we talk about whatever relevant sports topics come up, whether it's how they dealt with COVID and the pandemic and suspensions and the NBA creating this bubble in Disney. We also, last summer, The Last Dance came out, which is a Michael Jordan documentary. We covered each and every episode of that. You can catch that at our YouTube account. We also covered the James Harden trade and the NFL playoffs. And we got Champions League round of 16 coming up next week. So tune in. We're definitely going to have something for that. And we got the NBA All-Star Game was pushed to March 7th. And then baseball is going to come up in April 1st, and MLS as well. And whatever sports we're going to cover, we're trying to cover them all. For me, basketball is my favorite sport. I think Natalie's more of a football, baseball girl. But we got people that are interested and passionate about all sorts of sports throughout our entire nerdy sports culture, even
Tim-
F1 and wrestling.
True. Tim is telling you that he took Spalding to his date for high school. Like,
Who you gonna take,
I
Spalding?
love that line.
Spalding.
Though. I love that line. It's like,
That
what
line
is
is
Spalding your boyfriend?
That took her a minute too.
Right? She's like, what?
It's like, wait, Spalding?
Oh shit!
It's like,
Oh,
yeah,
you
you carry
going
that
dick
basketball
back
around
there.
with you all day.
Um,
But basketball was like my girlfriend for like a good 4 years. I'm not gonna lie.
Those of you who have enjoyed this crossover episode, we will be doing more of these because there are a lot of sports movies or sports related movies I'd like to touch. So there will be more coming in the future because I had fun recording this. So thank you, Natalie and Tim, for joining us.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Raven, as always.
Thank you.
My name is English Dave, and this has been a Nerdy Bunch special of Back to the Future. We looked at love and basketball. And as always, Natalie,
Keep it nerdy.
keep it nerdy, nerds. Peace.